Previously on Dark Winter.
It's December the 3rd, 2022, 5 days after the first nuclear war in history. My name is Greg. I live in north central Pennsylvania. I'm in my basement right now, trying to survive the fallout. And I'm keeping a video log of my experiences surviving this national crisis. I heard somebody knocking on my door, so I went upstairs to investigate, and I found a woman at my door. So this woman that came to my door, her name is Nancy. She's 47 years old, and she was on her way home from Pittsburgh to New York. I'm also concerned about martial law and our government using this situation to their benefit and basically creating an endless martial law state. It's going to be very, very hard to trust people now, and do very quick reconnaissance around my property, see if I can't see any tracks or any sign of people wandering around where they're not supposed to be wandering. And at the same time, I want to see if anybody followed Nancy here. I want to just do very, very quick recon around my perimeter here. But I actually really love this basement now because I know it's safe down here. I have everything I need, and I know that what's going on up there is a whole lot worse, and will be a whole lot worse as time goes on.
Alright guys, here we go. First time leaving my house since the nuclear attack. I don't see any tracks.
My name is Greg. I live in north central Pennsylvania. It is December the 5th, 2022, the 7th day after Russia launched a full-scale nuclear attack on the United States, and the first nuclear war in the history of mankind. And I'm keeping a video diary of my experiences surviving in the aftermath of the nuclear attack. So I wanted to just update on Nancy. She came to our house a few days ago looking for shelter, food, and water. And she's doing well. She's really anxious to go and look for her daughter in Pittsburgh. And like I said in the last entry, I'm going to set her up with some items that will help her get to Pittsburgh and will keep her safe while she's looking for her daughter. She does have a Ford Bronco, and it has a carburetor, so it should be able to start right up as long as it has fuel, because it doesn't have a chip in it or any kind of computer, so it was unaffected by the EMPs. I've been trying to contact people on my ham radio, and I haven't had any luck. I've been scanning all the frequencies on my handheld, and this handheld is a Yaesu, So it's a top-notch handheld ham radio, and still I can't pick up any ham radio operators. You know, before this happened, a lot of my friends and a lot of people in the prepping community said that, oh, you got to get yourself a ham radio. You're going to be able to communicate with people. But I didn't realize that there's a lot that goes into ham radios, and it's not just buying a cheap ham radio and being able to just listen and communicate. A typical handheld ham radio has very limited transmit power. So I'm not going to really be able to communicate with people very far away. Now, I will be able to pick up signals better than I can transmit them, but still I'm going to be limited in what I can pick up and what I can transmit with this handheld. And I knew that. I knew that this would kind of limit me. I just never had the time to set up a full-size base station, which is really what I should have done. I was actually planning on doing that right before the attack happened. I was already thinking about setting up a base station and running a full-size dipole antenna along my roof. But I've been scanning all the frequencies and I haven't been able to pick anything up. I have an extra long antenna that I attached to it. I'm glad that I bought this extra long antenna because it'll extend some of the transmission range and receiving range on this little handheld. But still, I'm happy I have this. So Nancy and I have been talking, and she's just really anxious to go and look for her daughter. So we've been discussing how we're going to approach it. And I think what we're going to do is I'm going to set her up with some items like I mentioned in the last entry. I'm going to set her up with a 9mm pistol and some ammo, some spare magazines. And I'm going to set her up with some other items. And what we're going to do is I'm going to let her leave like 2 days before the 2-week mark, because I have a feeling that once the 2-week mark arrives, 14-day mark, that's when the government is going to put out the emergency alert and tell everybody that it's safe to emerge from their shelters. And they've been saying that you have to stay sheltered for 14 days. So everybody's going to emerge after 14 days and it's just going to be chaos. There's going to be all kinds of people hungry, thirsty, disoriented, panicking. So I think it would be best for her to leave around the day 12 mark. The radiation is going to still be a little bit high, but it should be pretty safe for her to leave around the day 11, day 12 mark. And what's going to happen is she's going to avoid running into that massive crowd of panicking people that are all going to be emerging from their shelters looking for food and resources and help from the government. So, you know, her being by herself, I thought that would be the best approach, so that's what we're going to do. And there is a new emergency alert system message that came up, so let me just play it, but it basically just gives an update on the situation, and it says that people in the northern plains states have to stay sheltered an extra week, so they're going to have to stay sheltered for 21 days, and that's because of all of the nuclear war targets in North Dakota, Montana, Nebraska, Wyoming. All of the silo fields are over there, 450 silos. Each one of those silos probably got hit with at least 1 or 2 nuclear warheads, probably at least half a megaton or a megaton each. So if you do the math, that's at least 500 warheads detonating at ground level between those states. So the fallout is probably massive in those areas. And I'm just really concerned about NYPrepper. You know, I hope that he has a good fallout shelter. And I hope he prepared for this, because I'm sure the fallout levels are probably insane over there. So let me just play this emergency alert system message. Let's turn my radio on.
This is the emergency alert system. This is not a test. This is an update on the national emergency. Fallout radiation remains high across the country. Please remain in your shelters for another 7 days. Residents of the following areas should remain sheltered for an additional 7 days for a total 14 more days. North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, areas within 50 miles of Washington, D.C., and the I-95 corridor from Richmond, Virginia to Boston, Massachusetts. These areas have extremely dangerous levels of fallout. The United States military will begin working on restoring electricity and distributing aid to the general population as soon as radiation levels reduce to safe levels. Shelters will be set up with running water, climate control, food, and medical care. The President and the National Command Authority are in secure locations commanding the United States nuclear arsenal and the military. There is currently no threat of an imminent attack on the United States. The President has authorized nationwide martial law, which includes the following restrictions to the general population: curfews from sunset to sunrise in cities of 100,000 or more, no gathering in public in groups of more than 10 people, no possession of firearms in public. Continuity of government plans are in effect. The President has authorized the military to seize control of any private industry needed for the survival of the nation, such as farming, mining, metallurgy, banking, and electrical distribution. Stay tuned to AM/FM radio for future updates.
So you hear that, guys? They're talking about martial law and the military being able to seize control of any industry that they deem necessary for the survival of the country. And that's how it all starts. That's how totalitarian governments start. So this martial law is a slippery slope, and the military being able to seize control of anything they want is just pretty much crazy, but we knew this would happen, so I'm not surprised at all. And I'm ready to resist if I have to. So I'm going to be really keeping an eye on what the government does over the next few weeks, if they really start to add more restrictions to their martial law. Right now, it's not so bad. Sunset to sunrise curfew in cities of 100,000 or more, not carrying firearms in public. It's not a huge deal, but time will tell if they don't go overboard and they don't go full totalitarian. So I've had my radio tuned to 446, and I haven't been able to reach anybody out there. 446 is a general purpose frequency for communicating with people on ham radios, and I haven't been able to reach anybody on 446. So I might give it a try again in a few minutes, but I want to just update my radiation dose level. I'm at 43.7 millisieverts total radiation dose. So I'm approaching the yearly limit for radiation workers. So I just absorbed in the last week all the radiation that somebody who works at a nuclear power plant absorbs in a whole year. So I don't really want to absorb much more radiation, so I don't plan to go outside again until the 14-day mark, or possibly a few days before. I'll most likely leave a couple days before just to do some recon and get a head start before the panicked masses get released from their shelters. So that's my plan right now. But the temperature is dropping outside, I can tell, because it's getting colder in here. I had to put on my fur hat, and I had to put on some bibs, and I got a really warm jacket. So I'm just glad that I have all those items. So I'm just glad that I prepared. I know there's probably a lot of people out there that are cold and miserable and hypothermic and have frostbite, but I can really start to feel the cold now. It must really be cold outside, because it's really starting to get cold down here. So I can only imagine what it's like outside, but it's still just above freezing in here, so it's not too bad. But, you know, being in this type of temperature 24/7 and not having any heat source like a wood stove or a fire or any kind of heating, you can go hypothermic easily. So I'm just so glad that I thought about this ahead of time, and I'm so glad that I'm an outdoorsman, and I was always an outdoorsman, and that I always purchased clothing that was functional and not just fashionable, which is the mistake that a lot of people made before the war started. Everybody would have fashionable clothing, but nobody had functional clothing. You know, they spent hundreds of dollars on name brands, designer brands, just so they could look cool and show off, and all that clothing is useless. All that fashionable clothing is absolutely useless now. So I'm going to try to call someone again on this ham radio here. I'm going to see if anybody answers. So here we go. Hello, is anyone out there? My name is Polar Bear. I repeat, my name is Polar Bear. I'm looking to connect with other survivors to share information. My location is in the Allegheny Plateau of Pennsylvania. Please respond. Over. Hello, is anyone out there? My name is Polar Bear. I repeat, my name is Polar Bear. I'm looking to connect with other survivors to share information. My location is in the Allegheny Plateau of Pennsylvania. Please respond. Over. Hello, is anyone out there? My name is Polar Bear. I repeat, my name is Polar Bear. I'm looking to connect with other survivors to share information. My location is the Allegheny Plateau of Pennsylvania. Please respond. Over. Hello, is anyone out there? My name is Polar Bear. I repeat, my name is Polar Bear. I'm looking to connect with other survivors to share information. My location is the Allegheny Plateau of Pennsylvania. Please respond. Over.
Polar Bear, read you loud and clear. This is John Doe. Over.
John Doe, what's your status and location? Over.
Polar Bear, we have everything we need. We're doing good, holding up in the basement. Also Allegheny Plateau. Over.
John Doe, how many are with you? Over.
Polar Bear, 3, wife and 2 German Shepherds. 2 sons in the military, but they're not with me right now. They're on deployment. How about you? Over.
John Doe, just me and my wife. What's wrong with your voice? Over.
Polar Bear, I'm using a voice distorter for security reasons. How are you holding up? Over.
John Doe, I'm holding up good. How about your neighbors? Have you heard anything from them? Over.
Polar Bear, all is quiet in my neighborhood. One of my neighbors brought all of his cows into his barn shortly before the attack and piled up hay bales around the walls of the barn and on the roof of the barn to try to protect the cows. And then he scrambled to bring all of his farming equipment and machinery inside of the barn. How about you? How's your neighborhood? Over.
John Doe, I hope he got them all inside and had time to stack up enough hay bales. I hope all your neighbors got into their basements. All is quiet here. Most of my neighbors are old-timers and farmers. I assume they got into their basements, but I have not gone to check on them. Maybe I should. Have you communicated with anyone else? Have you had any visitors? Over.
Polar Bear, I've been in contact with a few other people over the past few days. No visitors. How about you? Over.
John Doe, you're the first. I had one visitor. She was passing through from Pittsburgh on her way to New York. She took shelter in a culvert off of the interstate, I-80. Until she ran out of food and was becoming hypothermic. She wandered out after the second day. She was going around knocking on everyone's doors in the area, and I guess I was the first one to answer. Over.
Polar Bear, are you running a handheld or a base station? Over.
John Doe, I'm running a handheld, a good one, a Yaesu. But max output is 10 watts. On high ground with my long antenna, I can transmit probably a good 10 or 20 miles and pick up signals up to 50 miles or more. Over.
Polar Bear, I have a 100-watt base station, so I've been able to reach as far away as Warren. So far, I've talked to people in Warren, Clarion, Benezet, Wellsboro, Williamsport, Lock Haven, and Renovo. Over.
John Doe, wow, that's impressive. How are they holding up? Anything interesting they've seen or heard? Over.
Polar Bear, everyone I talked to so far said they were doing well. All of them took shelter in a basement. Some of them didn't have basements because they lived in trailers or on a slab. So they went up to their hunting clubs or stayed with friends and family who had basements. And a person in Warren that I spoke with reported seeing U.S. military Black Hawks hovering over the Kinzua Dam. And he said he saw special ops securing the Kinzua Dam. Also, a man in Wellsboro reported seeing several B-2s flying eastbound. He said he counted 4 of them, as well as dozens of fighter jets. A guy in Williamsport said he was in contact with some people around Lock Haven who reported seeing Patriot missiles moving eastbound on I-80 towards New Jersey. The one thing they all had in common is all were going eastbound towards New York and New Jersey. Over.
John Doe, thanks for all that intel. I wish I could reach my friends and family in New York and Tennessee. Do you know any way we can reach further? Over.
Polar Bear, you could try to bounce the signal off of the ionosphere with your handheld. If you do that, you could even reach Alaska, but it's hard to do. You need the right atmospheric conditions. A more reliable way would be to find a comm site that has a radio tower or an amateur radio repeater. And if we could get one of those towers up and running, we could broadcast a distress signal that could potentially reach as far as New York or even further. Over.
John Doe, wow. Well, there's a huge comm site nearby me. It's set up on the tallest mountain for 100 miles in all directions. Over.
Polar Bear, if it's the one I'm thinking of, I've been up to that site before. There's all kinds of towers on that site. There's even cell towers, weather radars, and the military even has their own tower there. The nice thing about that site is there's actually a satellite dish on it. We could possibly use that satellite dish to reach other ham radio stations further out, provided that the satellites survived the EMP. Over.
John Doe, do you have experience with this type of stuff? My experience is just limited to using a handheld. I don't know much about base stations, antennas, or repeaters. Over.
Polar Bear, yes, I worked in communications my whole career. I retired recently. I used to set up and maintain radio towers for a living for local emergency services and local radio stations. I also was the president of the local amateur radio club, so I'm still theoretically responsible for maintaining the amateur radio repeaters in our area. But I don't maintain the radio towers for emergency services and local radio stations anymore because I'm retired now. However, I have set them all up and I know the ins and outs of all of them around here. Over.
John Doe, wow, that's great. So when do you plan to check up on the repeaters? Can you take a trip up to the comm site with me? Over.
Polar Bear, I don't plan on it. I'm too old. The site you're talking about is in some rugged country. I'm not in any kind of shape to cover that kind of terrain on foot. I have to stay with the old lady. Over.
John Doe, if you guide me through, I can do what needs to be done to get those towers up and running. And maybe we can broadcast a signal. Over.
Polar Bear, how good are your mechanical skills? You aren't some city slicker that can't change your oil, are you? Over.
John Doe, that's funny. I'm definitely not a city slicker. I can manage. Over.
Polar Bear, sounds good. The only problem is you're not going to be able to reach me from that site. with your handheld because it's further out from me and your handheld doesn't have enough transmit power. So you're going to have to write down everything with pen and paper that I'm about to tell you. I'll give you detailed instructions on what to do and what to look for. I've set up the towers on that site and maintained them for years, so I'm very familiar with that site. So whenever you're ready, get a pen and paper. Over.
John Doe, stand by. Let me get my pen and paper. Over.
Polar Bear, you're going to have to be on high alert when you're up there. The military might try seizing the comm site and using it for national security reasons because there's radars there, cell towers, satellite dishes, multiple radio towers for shortwave radio, and they also have their own tower. So they might try to secure that area, or they might have already secured it. So you're going to have to be on high alert so you don't get detained. Because as you heard in the emergency alert message, we are under a state of martial law, and under martial law, theoretically the military can do anything they want. In addition to that, we have some unfriendly locals up there. So just be aware. Are you a woodsman? Can you shoot? Over.
John Doe, yes. Don't worry about me. Just tell me what I gotta do. Over.
Polar Bear, do you know what FJB means? Over.
Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon.
Polar Bear, 9mm or 44 Magnum? Over.
John Doe, 44 Magnum for sure. Over.
Polar Bear, have you ever been up to Benezet to see the elk? Over.
John Doe, I sure have. Over. John Doe, what do your sons do in the military? Over.
Polar Bear, my sons work in military intelligence. They're considered VIPs. They have top secret clearances. I'll tell you more after you complete this initial mission. Over.
John Doe, sounds good. Take care of yourself and take care of your old lady and the pups. I hope to meet them all soon. Godspeed. Oh, one last thing. Have you heard anything about the nuclear plants, like around the country? Have you heard anything? Did they explode? What about Limerick and Susquehanna, the ones near us? Over.
Polar Bear, everything that I've heard is that all of the nuclear power plants in the country were shut down as soon as the military found out that Russia was planning to launch a nuclear attack. A signal went out to all of the nuclear power plants, and they all shut down their reactors, and they're all running on standby diesel generators right now. So as far as I know, all of the power plants, including Limerick and Susquehanna over here, are shut down, and no reports of any meltdowns so far. And my sons tell me the same thing, no meltdowns anywhere. So that's good news.
John Doe, I'll be in touch soon. I think I'm going to head up there in a couple of days. I think I'm going to head up there probably just 2 or 3 days before the 2-week mark. I don't want to head up there as soon as everybody emerges from their shelters. but I don't want to go up there now because the radiation is too high. So I'm going to wait a couple of more days and then I'm going to head up there, because I don't think there's going to be any people wandering around with the radiation levels outside. Most people are probably still in their shelters, so I think the safest time to go is going to be before the 2-week mark, before everybody leaves their shelters and people are going to be wandering around all over the place. So now's a great time to go up there because there's no one up there probably, and there's probably no one wandering around anywhere. So I'm going to head up there soon. I'll keep you posted. God bless you, brother. Over. Well, that was some great news. So I'm going to head up there probably around day 11 or day 12. I'm going to let Nancy go, and then I'm going to head up there and do what I got to do. Should be pretty quiet out there. It's in a remote location, so it's all forested terrain. There's no real population nearby, but you just never know. It's a very big comm site. They have all kinds of stuff up there. The military has stuff there. There's weather radars. There's the local radio stations. So it's a huge comm site. So it's very possible that the military seized control of it already and they could try to detain me if they catch me there. But luckily I'm a master of camouflage and I know the woods very well. I'm a country boy, so I know how to hide in the forest. The forest is like my second home. So I'm not really too worried about that. Of course, I'm worried that someone could try to ransack my place while I'm gone. But I think if I go just a couple of days before the 2-week mark, I should be pretty safe because people are still going to be sheltered for the most part. So that's the plan. The plan is going to be, I'm going to send Nancy on her way around day 11 or day 12. And then after she leaves, I'm going to head up there. And it's probably going to take me a whole night to hike up there. It's about 10 miles away, roughly. And there's some pretty steep terrain I'm going to have to go through, some hills and some cliffs and things like that. So it's going to take me a couple hours to get there and a couple hours to get back. So it's going to take me at least a whole night. And I'm probably going to have to do it at night so this way I can conceal myself. So this is some great news. Hopefully I can get this thing up and running and I can send out a signal and try to get in contact with some people in New York, possibly my family in Tennessee, possibly Hudson Valley Prepping and Survival in New York. But I think there's just going to be total chaos at the 2-week mark when everybody leaves their shelter. People are just going to be panicking. And there's just going to be all kinds of chaos out there. Once people know the radiation subsided, you're going to have marauders, you're going to have gangs, you're going to have all kinds of psychopaths trying to act out all their fantasies, murderers, rapists, cannibals, all kinds of people. They're going to be wandering around. They know that there's not going to be much law and order, so it's going to be an opportunity for them to basically do whatever they want. So I think there's going to be all kinds of evil out there in the world when people emerge from their shelters. So I have to be on high alert. And I can't underestimate anybody because I just don't know who I'm going to be dealing with.